The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
I tell you what, these Oklahoma media members giving Auburn no shot.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Is this like a new rivalry that's built up?
I don't know about rivalry, but I'm not sure if y'all have heard this, but Jackson Arnold used to play at Oklahoma. And
what?
Now he's going back to Oklahoma. I don't know if y'all have missed that, but goodness gracious, the storylines around this one are absolutely tremendous, with John Mateer and his incredibly strong start to the season and Heisman buzz, and then obviously everything that goes along with Jackson Arnold returning home. This is going to be an awesome one for sure.
Yeah, as much as the coaches want to try to take the emotion out of it, they're all just talking about it's about the name on the front, not the name on the back. I mean, that's not exactly what they're saying, but that's what they're trying to say. Sure. And it is. I mean, it really is. It's about Oklahoma versus Auburn. It's about two teams that played a really tight ball game last year, two teams that think that they're better than what they were a year ago. And yes, Jackson Arnold's a part of that. And so much of how Oklahoma wins this game depends on how well they contain Jackson Arnold in the run game in particular. But it's bigger than that. There's a lot of talent on both sides of the football that go beyond just the quarterbacks.
Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to talk about specific things, but like obviously all the attention is on both of these quarterbacks, Mateer and Arnold. But to me, the most important individual matchup in this game, in my opinion, Auburn's offensive line versus this Oklahoma defensive line that has really shocked the conference. I mean, statistically, they've done a lot of impressive things up front, and if we can be specific and say the front seven if you guys want to. But to me, whoever wins that battle, I think wins this football game.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm seeing and noticing as well, is that the Auburn runs the ball a lot. So far this season, Auburn is sitting here with 726 rushing yards. Oklahoma's not giving up. They've given up an average of under 100 yards per game. So that's going to be a massive battle in that. While also Auburn's defense, they're not giving up very many rushing yards as well. Total 201 yards so far this season, roughly 70 something per game. And Oklahoma is still trying to figure out their running game. So I guess the big question is, how effective do you think, we'll start with you, Zach, how effective do you think Jackson Arnold's going to be in his running game on top of the pass going into this one?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the plan. Auburn hasn't played a team that has tried to stop the run yet. Auburn went out and spent all this money on Jackson Arnold and these elite wide receivers. They've got arguably the best receiver room on paper in the SEC, and we've seen glimpses of it, right? But all of these defenses, despite Auburn having the success that you mentioned on the run there, Jay, it's been the game plan has still been, hey, we don't want these receivers to beat us. I think Oklahoma's approach is going to be different. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that. But that's what the Hugh Freeze offense does. I mean, you guys run some RPO stuff at Oklahoma too. Like, you take what the defense gives you. And so far, the defense has said, hey, we're going to keep the box light. And Auburn's taken advantage of that. Does that change on Saturday? Do we see more targets to Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton? Malcolm Simmons is expected to return. Horatio Fields has been an incredible surprise. I'm fascinated to see how Oklahoma chooses to attack Auburn when Auburn has the football.
To me, it's going to come down to that, because I think that Oklahoma is not going to get out of what they do best, and that's stop the run. They're going to want to stop the run first and then force Auburn to be in some second and long, third and long situations where it's going to put Jackson Arnold having to drop back and make a throw. That's where they want him to live. If that means adding an extra guy to the box in early downs and letting your guys on the outside be one-on-one with Cam Coleman, with Eric Singleton, they might risk that early in this game just to see how well their cornerbacks are going to hold up. They don't want to get beat in the run game. They don't want this to be a repeat of Oklahoma versus Alabama in 2024 or Vandy versus Alabama, where it's, hey, we're going to run the ball 40 times. We're going to take the air out of the football and keep control of the clock. No, they want this game to be a situation where Jackson's going to have to throw it. If you make him throw it, Oklahoma's going to like their chances in the long run. Will that happen? That's going to be the biggest key because Auburn's really good up front. They run the ball really effectively. Jackson Arnold's a good running quarterback. The +1 run game is going to be the key. Oklahoma's been good at defending it at times here and there. Michigan didn't really try to utilize Bryce Underwood's legs a whole lot in that game, but when they did, Oklahoma was ready for it and they dropped him for loss on a number of occasions. So much comes down to, can they prevent Jackson Arnold from beating them with his legs? If they do that, it'll put them in a better position to defend him.
Let me ask you guys this, because statistically, Oklahoma's defensive stats are elite. I don't want to take anything away from Oklahoma. And I want to be very clear. I think they're deserving all the hype that they're getting. But with this game against Michigan, I mean, do we know that Michigan is good offensively? Like, do we know that? And then the other two games were against, far inferior opponents where it's like, does that matter in this game? So I just want to ask y'all's opinion on, sure, you shut down Michigan offensively, but I think Michigan's quarterback is going to be elite. I don't think he's elite, in his second game ever and his first road start. Where are y'all on this?
I think Michigan's offense is good. I think they came into that game understanding that we don't want to put it in Bryce Underwood's hands as often as we need to try to go to win the game if we get behind, because it doesn't set him up for success. His first road start in a hostile environment, that's not going to be a recipe for his development to actually be a positive thing, kind of like what we've seen with Jackson Arnold last year. Not great circumstances to try to develop with him, and the coaching staff didn't try to adjust anything to help support him a little bit. I think they came into that understanding like, hey, we're going to have a hard time. We're going to try and run the ball. We're going to try and do what we can to not put it all on our true freshman quarterback in his second road start. But I do think that Oklahoma's defense reiterated that plan. It's like, maybe they were going to try and throw the ball a little bit, but Oklahoma didn't really allow for them to have much success. Yeah. And so they realized, okay, we got to make this a conservative game plan for Bryce.
Yeah, if you look at the average for Michigan outside of Oklahoma in their, cupcake games, they're averaging roughly 40-something points per game. They're also putting up roughly almost 500 yards per game when they're not playing Oklahoma. And I say that because you can do that comparison with other teams as well. Look at the cupcake games. Look at how those teams actually perform when they don't play that team, and then how they perform when they play them. And so to me, I think Michigan's going to be a good team long term. The Central Michigan game was very much a cupcake, and it looked like a cupcake. They just dominated them front and center, and I think that's kind of where the difference comes in. At Michigan offensive line, to me, is still good. They ran for 381 yards on Central Michigan. You're supposed to do that. That's one of those that you're supposed to do.
I mean, my thing is, like, who cares, though? Like, who cares what you do, what Michigan does against, Central Michigan? I mean, the talk about Georgia was how they played with their food the first 2 weeks, and then they win one of the most exciting games of the college football season against Tennessee. And I think we all agree that Tennessee has a chance to be a playoff team based on what we've seen so far. So who cares? Who cares about those games,
I think everyone should. And the reason is because the one knock we had on Michigan when it came to playing their food is that their defense did not look like their usual self. It did not look like your usual self against Tennessee. So they did not get better when they played Tennessee. Their offense just stepped up in that game. So that to me is something that's a good indication of what your defense could potentially be, like the peak. To me, if they had found a way to slow down Tennessee like they have done every other year, even with Heupel there, they found ways to slow them down. They could not slow down that Tennessee defense. And so that's why I point out those non-cons, because even when you're playing with your food, if you are still able to achieve the level that the expectation or even the ceiling is close to your ceiling, that's typically an indication of what the season's going to look like.
I mean, I look at this, Zach, and
I don't know if I agree with that.
I look at this and I think Auburn is the best offense that Oklahoma is going to play yet this season. Okay? Sure. This is their biggest test. Two of the best wide receivers in college football against a secondary that hasn't really been tested significantly yet. Jackson Arnold's a much more experienced quarterback than Bryce Underwood is at this point in their careers.
Sure.
Jackson Arnold, I am the biggest Jackson Arnold truther that you will find in college football circles, Auburn fans included. You can go back and find some of our stuff from last year.
Yeah.
He's got some limitations.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You can throw the records out in a rivalry game. Miami Hurricanes have been the far better informed team so far, but the Florida Gators are going to come in desperate, looking to turn their season around.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
There's been a lot going on in Gainesville, from key injuries to suspensions of one of the assistant coaches. I mean, where do we start?
Start with the fact that I am so upset that this isn't an undefeated versus undefeated game, because I was really looking forward to it all summer. I was like, if Florida can even be 2-1 going into this game, I'm going to talk so much trash to Donna's listeners. But I can't, and now I know I'm going to have to deal with the comments of like, oh, you don't look as confident this time around, do you? I'm going to have to deal with that little shtick that they're going to bring out there. But I think the biggest storyline is just Billy Napier is, in theory, coaching for his job. I don't even know if he really is at this point. Honestly, if it were up to me, I'd say, hey, I don't care what happens for the rest of the season. You're not the guy. I said this last year after the A&M game. I was like, hey, he's not going to be the coach to win you a championship. Get rid of him. That ended up not being what they did because, they won a few games at the end, and that means you're right back on track. How'd that go for you? But I think that, I don't know if he's really coaching for his job at this point. I don't think he's going to get fired after this game, regardless of what happens, unless it's an absolute blowout again. I don't think this is going to be the game that gets him fired. And a lot goes into that. Partially, Jabbar Jalouk, who is suspended for 3 games due to the LSU pregame altercation, was, I think, thought of as the interim in waiting. And so at least that's how I've thought of him, was that he would be the interim in waiting. And so he's suspended for 3 games. So did that buy Billy 3 games? And also, of course, you fire a head coach and your team's allowed to enter the transfer portal immediately for 30 days. Personally, and I know this is like a scummy side of business here, but this is a business. I'd say I'm going to wait at least 5 games, make sure some guys don't have the opportunity to redshirt and then enter the transfer portal. And then they have more incentive to actually play out the season before just entering the portal at the end of the season, or at least playing a few more games and then entering the portal. So I think the biggest thing for Florida is just like, is this team going to show up for Billy once again? Because last year we all thought Billy was gone, and then they showed up like crazy and rallied behind him. So I think for Florida, that's got to be the biggest storyline of, will they do it again? And do they still believe in Billy? Which I do think a large portion of that locker room still does.
Yeah, I think for Miami, the first obvious thing is keep consistency. Don't take your foot off the gas, because a lot has been working for the Hurricanes so far. The mistakes have been down overall this season. The trenches have been dominant, which is really what Mario Cristobal envisioned when he took this job. The offensive line has been really good for the past couple of years, but the defensive line, I think, has taken a big step forward. I'm going to be very interested to see how, and we'll talk about this more with our matchups coming up a little bit later, how Miami's defensive line, with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor looking unblockable at times, how they're going to match up against Florida's offensive line, which is very good. So we're going to get a look at that on Saturday. That's going to be one of the key matchups. But also the way Carson Beck and his receivers have performed so far has been a really pleasant surprise. I think Miami definitely benefits from, a lot of the negativity and the narrative surrounding Carson when he decided to leave Georgia, because I really believe that lit a fire under him, because a lot of the stuff that people in Athens were claiming about him, that, hey, maybe he's not the hardest worker, he's not the best teammate, His experience so far in Miami going back to January is the exact opposite. The guy has been a film junkie. He's been a leader. You know, from the moment he arrived on campus, he dove headfirst into Shannon Dawson's offense, and even not being healthy enough to throw the football in spring, was still able to hit the ground running when fall practices began. And we've seen, you know, the targets that he's developed the most chemistry with so far. CJ Daniels, formerly of LSU, who comes up with a circus catch or two in every single game. Malachi Toney, true freshman, who's been really good. And you started to see last week a couple of other targets emerge. True freshman receiver Josh Moore had his breakout game with 2 touchdown receptions. And Keelan Marion, transfer receiver from BYU, led the team in receiving against South Florida last week with 6 catches for 81. So, I mean, so far it's one of those things where everything's been working for Miami. So you're going to start to see their consistency tested, because we all remember what happened last year. I mean, Miami had some dicey moments, but they did start the season 9-0 before fading down the stretch. So you have to show the intensity over the course of 12 plus games. That's one thing. And another thing I'm going to be looking at, Brandon, you know, if the scenario comes up in this game, we'll see. But the Hurricanes so far this year have not trailed at any point in their games. They were at one point tied against Notre Dame 24-24 in the fourth quarter, but never trailed. Obviously didn't trail against Bethune-Cookman, didn't trail against South Florida. So we haven't seen like how the game plan and how the attitude changes if you're playing from behind. You know, the pass rush, which has had a lot of success for Miami, has been able to, you know, really pin their ears back playing with leads. Miami's had the opportunity to, you know, lean on their running game a lot to milk the clock. So if that scenario comes up this week, we'll find out. But I want to get your take here when we're sticking with storylines. Interesting quarterback storylines on both sides, because, you know, Carson Beck, he's completing almost 80% of his passes so far. He's got 7 touchdowns. He even scored a rushing touchdown against South Florida this past weekend. Carson is actually, it's very early, I don't put a lot of stock into this stuff now, but he's now top in the Heisman Trophy odds according to FanDuel. So he's had a really good start. And then with DJ Lagway, sure, there are a number of different reasons for it, Brandon, but we've not seen, you know, the form that he was in the second half of last year. And Lagway comes off a 5 interception performance against LSU.
Yeah, I mean, DJ looked like he was reading in Chinese when he was looking at that iPad on the sideline. It was brutal. I hate doing things like this, but like I really don't remember the last time that I saw a quarterback just look as flustered as he did. And like it didn't even look like he was like, oh yeah, like I have no idea what's actually happening. It kind of just looked like he looked as if he was like, no matter what I do, like things are going poorly here. And it was brutal to watch. Like you could just see the frustration on his face after the 3rd pick, and then after the 4th pick, and then after the 5th pick. Like you just saw the frustration every time. And I'll be really interested to see if he bounces back, because I also do feel like maybe there's that little weight off his shoulders of like, well, I'm never going to play a worse game than that. So at least there's that, like, he can only go up from here, I guess. So I'd be really interested to see how DJ bounces back. I'm interested to see how Miami defends Florida. I said this last week when doing the crossover with Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU, where and that was very Blake Baker style of, we're going to play press man, we're going to be really aggressive, we're going to throw a whole bunch of different looks at you pressure wise. I said that if I'm any defensive coordinator, I'm doing that same thing against DJ Lagway. I'm being as disrespectful as humanly possible. I'm playing press man coverage. I'm sending everything I possibly can at you, and I'm going to do it until you make me respect you. Because at this point, like Florida Gators fans have had the argument of, well, it's because of Florida's offense going so condensed that teams can just blitz the hell out of Lagway and really tee off on him. Last week, we saw them go more spread out than they've ever gone under Billy Napier, and LSU still did the same thing. And my argument for it's because the formation is condensed is that even if you spread things out, that doesn't solve the problem of your passing game, because you still need to complete the passes, and DJ Lagway hasn't done that. So I'm really interested to see that battle. Honestly, the defensive coordinator battle to me is just incredible in this game, because that's how I would defend DJ Lagway. But then also, I mentioned the other day that I think that Garrett Nussmeier is a smarter quarterback than Carson Beck. Because I think that football IQ wise, I think Garrett Nussmeier is arguably the smartest quarterback in the nation. Son of an offensive coordinator. You watch the way that he manages the line at the line of scrimmage, and you watch how he just manages an offense. It's incredible. I don't think he's physically a great quarterback at all, but I think that IQ wise, he's maybe the smartest quarterback in the nation. And it wasn't a knock on Carson Beck, but I am very interested to see two things for Carson Beck mentally. One, how he's going to deal with Florida's pressure looks and just the way they disguise pressure and disguise coverage on the back end. I think that's been giving quarterbacks a lot of fits for really the better part of a year. Once they figured things out last year, that's how they defended everybody. That's how they made their plays. That's how they caused hell for quarterbacks. And then also just from a confidence standpoint from Carson Beck, like he's been playing very well, but last year, he played one of his worst games as a college quarterback against Florida with the 3 interceptions. 2 of them were just awful decisions that you can't really excuse. So I'm just interested to see how he bounces back. I'm not saying that's going to be a struggle for him. It's just a thing I'm interested to see. How do you kind of shake that off? Because he's also obviously in a completely different setting than he was in last year.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet in the moment. Player props, same-game parlays, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Chris, both of these teams are looking to start and strong in Big 12 play, and it's going to be a massive key for Texas Tech to be able to deal with the elements that are going to come when going against a hostile environment in Rice-Eccles Stadium. This, to me, is where it gets interesting. We talked a little bit on the last episode about this group having not played a true road game. To now be playing a true road game at altitude where it's going to be noisy and loud, especially on your offensive line, for me, if I'm a Texas Tech fan, that is a concern. How do you feel like that group is ready? And it's not NFL caliber yet for John Henry Daly, but he is a guy. He has 5 sacks. He's been really productive off the edge. And this Utah team does have some strong defensive line talent. How are you feeling about the matchup in the trenches for Tech?
And he transferred from BYU?
Yes, he did. And our other guy did too, Logan Fotto.
This is wild to me. Like, everybody hates each other with this deal. And like, arguably the greatest coach in Utah history, Kyle Whittingham, yes?
Yep.
BYU grad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the whole thing is so fascinating to me because this is all new for those of us in Texas. We're used to, I could tell you a lot about TCU and Baylor and some of these private school snotty people and all that stuff. But the whole BYU and Utah thing is fascinating to me. I think that at face value, we can get into matchups and everything like that. But at face value, I think it will be difficult to run the ball if you're Texas Tech against this Utah defense.
Mm-hmm.
But because I think typically Morgan Scalley plays a lot of man coverage. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he does.
Yeah, right. And that's where I would say I really would like the matchups that Texas Tech has on the outside. And Caleb Douglas and Reggie Virgil. Reggie Virgil is one of the top receiver portal. I mean, Oklahoma and Florida State were very frustrated that they didn't add him in the portal back in December. Caleb Douglas, I think, was the second leading receiver in the conference of returning players last year behind Jordan Tyson, and we all know who that is. Coy Aiken had a 100-yard game last week, but then they also added Terrence Carter, who was one of the top tight end portal candidates, and he's been just this freakish, weird mismatch. He's like 6'2", shorter than most tight ends, but he's 250 and very fast, very athletic. And so I'm fascinated. Can Utah cover everybody? Nobody else has been able to, but that's because not everybody's been very good that you've played. And most of these guys haven't even played into the second half or but a couple of series in the third quarter. So that's where it comes down to me is I don't know if you'll be able to run it with much success. I do think that you'll be able to hold up and let your quarterback play some pitch and catch, but this is where Baron Morton has to be good.
Mm-hmm.
You asked this, aloud, and one of the earlier things we were talking about is he good enough to go lead you to a conference championship? And this is a game where he needs to be really good, or he needs to be a plus. And now's the time. And if not now, then when? And it's not like this game is the end all be all, but he's going to have to play well. And that may be by design. That may be like, we like these matchups, and so we're going to put it in our quarterback's hands, and we're going to trust that he can deliver it, and we can win one-on-one matchups on the outside or down the seam or whatever it is, because we just don't know if we want to beat our head against the wall trying to run the football. I don't know. So that's where I'm curious. And I don't – he's – this is one of the best defenses in the last 4 or 5 years, especially so at home. I think I'll throw this number out at you, that I think that in the last 4 years, I think Coach Scalley's defenses are averaging giving up 15 points a game, which is top five in the country, again, with games in Salt Lake. So that's why, like, our points going to be at a premium. I mean, I just don't know really what to expect here. And I don't know if this version of the Ute defense, is it as good as it was last year, which was really good. Is it as good last year, and where are the holes, or I don't know. I guess you tell me.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn, because on coming into this year, they lost so many veterans. They had key starters, like 4 of them that were part of like both Pac-12 title teams, even like that one, the ones in 21, 22, right? All the COVID year stuff. Those guys got to stay around a little longer. So there was a lot of turnover on this roster. So I've said, hey, you lose veterans, you're going to take a step back. Well, so far, so good. Haven't played anyone, but when you haven't played anyone, you want to blow them out. I mean, you give up only 10 points at UCLA. You held Cal Poly to 9, Wyoming to 6, right? Like this Utah team, the 6 was a garbage time touchdown late. This Utah defense has looked the part so far. But as we've also said frequently, you haven't really played anyone. This is such a massive leap up of an offense that it's going to be really fascinating to see. I've really liked what John Henry Daly has shown. He really didn't do much at all last year, but now he's had an offseason to grow and develop, and he looks like a really strong pass rusher off the edge. I think he's a guy who NFL scouts are not there to see John Henry Daly, but he could surprise them. Not a first-round pick, but a mid-round pick guy that he's been really productive. Utah's defensive tackles, they lost their top 3 D tackles from a year ago, and they've already had an injury at that position as well, too. So how is that defensive tackle room going to hold up on the interior? Who else can get pressure? Really like the linebackers that Utah's. Lander Barton, Jonathan Hall, Leavani Demooney, all some veterans that have been able to produce a lot for this Utah team. Secondary, retooled pretty well. Did have a season-ending injury at a safety spot, but that safety, Rabbit Evans, had missed a couple other games as well, too. So secondary has looked really good and strong. We talked about Smith Snowden on offense yesterday. I think he's one of the best corners in the Big 12 Conference, too, and Elijah Davis does a good job on the outside as well. So I do think this Utah defense is good, Chris, but it is so fascinating. Yesterday, we talk about how Utah's offense wants to be in third down and short situations. I think Texas Tech's going to be comfortable and not comfortable, but they're okay if they're third and long, because they're going to trust and like the talent they have on the outside. And I can't wait to see who's going to win those matchups, because even if Utah plays good coverage, I saw Morton had one throw down the sideline for a touchdown last week. It was great coverage by the Beavers, but there's nothing you can do when that throw is on the money.
Yeah, and that's, and I think that Joey McGuire has shown he's not as crazy as like Dave Aranda is with this, because like what Baylor's doing on 4th down attempts is just I don't know if it's insanity or he's just way ahead of the curve. But I think that, sometimes and Texas Tech will come into this game as an underdog, and that factors into their analytics and the way that they approach the game. They may be more aggressive on 4th downs as well, because if they like those, it's just you got to win one-on-one matchups. And if you trust your quarterback and he's got to put the ball up there for, because these receivers, like Reggie Virgil and Caleb Douglas, they're 6'3", 6'4", Coy Aikens 6'3", and obviously John Carlos Miller is about 6'5", and Terrence Carter, the tight end, and we mentioned he's not as tall as your typical tight end, but he's fascinating to me, because if you put a linebacker on him, which is typically what some teams do, he's just so much faster. And so I don't know. I am curious internally in that I wonder what they have held on to
Mm-hmm.
and what they haven't shown, because most of these guys haven't played, like I said, into the second half in any of these 3 games. Your offensive line hasn't played into the second half in a lot of these games. And there's some, as you and I touched on, there's been some tinkering going on there with the offensive line. It's set, but not quite set.
Mm-hmm.
And can they hold up? Can they move people? I've often asked this aloud. Can Texas Tech run the ball when they want to? And when the opposition knows we know what's coming, we're going to try to stop it. Last year, the answer was yes. This year, I just don't know. And that's one of the you mentioned injuries. That one of the key additions to this portal class was a USC running back, Quentin Joyner, who I think was going to be the kind of the do-it-all guy, 5'10", about 215. I saw him enough in August. It's like, oh, yeah, this is going to be really good. And in the second scrimmage, he ended up hurting his ACL. So your running back room, it looks a little bit different now. And it's, I don't want to say like a weakness, but is it a question mark? Yeah. I mean, I think especially in games like this, you've got talent there, but it's just, depth and proven experience. No. So talent, yes, but proven experience. No. So anyway, this is interesting. I think for Texas Tech to win this game, Baron Morton will have to have a good to really big day.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if I know how to define that just yet on what it will take. What do you got to score? 24? Is that enough? You got to score 27. You got to score 31. You got to score 28. I mean, you got to score 40. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take here, but I think a lot will be on the quarterback for Texas Tech that day.